He called the black nurse useless, until a retired general bowed to her. In the lobby, Lieutenant Marin Adebayo moved like a shadow through the 6th floor of Harlan Military Medical Center, unseen when she chose, unavoidable when she didn't. Her scrub top clung damp to her spine, the dull fluorescence above etching sharp lines into her dark skin and high cheekbones. She didn't rush. Rushing was for nurses trying to impress someone. Marin had no one to impress. The ICU was a goddamn pressure cooker tonight. 2 codes in the last hour. 1 GSW survivor who wouldn't make sunrise. Someone had dropped a ventilator tray on the trauma side, and the medtechs were still cleaning shards of plastic and blood off the tile. But Marin's vitals were steady. She moved from room to room with quiet precision, monitoring telemetry, adjusting meds, updating charts in code speak, faster than most residents could read it. Your new patient's en route. VIP status. Nurse Claudia tapped Marin's shoulder like she was reluctant to touch her. Room 612. He's got his own detail. Oh, and, you'll love this, retired Colonel Victor Sloan. Marin's eyes didn't lift from the screen. Cardiac? End stage. Heart Swiss cheese. They're dumping him here to die comfortable. Claudia smirked. He's old school army. Don't take it personal if he calls you girl. Marin's lips twitched. Not a smile. She already knew who Victor Sloan was. She'd heard his name in briefing rooms where cell phones weren't allowed, under lights that hummed like bugs in the heat. Once in Helmand Province, his face had flashed across a projector while someone described a leadership architecture problem. Now he was just another failing body wrapped in brass and red tape. When they wheeled him in 20 minutes later, he looked like something exhumed from Arlington, thick-jawed, silver-haired, eyes sharp despite the oxygen tubes in his nose. 2 aides flanked the gurney, one in uniform, one civilian, mid-30s, buzz-cut, the kind of man who called himself a consultant but watched doors like an operator. Marin checked her badge, stepped forward. Colonel Sloan, I'm Lieutenant Adebayo, your ICU nurse for this shift. Sloan blinked at her. His eyes narrowed. You're the nurse. Correct. He exhaled slow. Didn't expect someone who looked like you. Marin tilted her head. You mean black, female, or competent? The consultant gave a tight chuckle before catching himself. Sloan didn't smile. I mean inexperienced, the colonel said. You're too young, and this is above your pay grade. Marin leaned in, just close enough for only him to hear. You're already dying, Colonel. If I wanted to watch it happen faster, I'd just follow protocol. His eyes sharpened. Good. Let him see it. She didn't need his respect, just his silence. By 0200, his telemetry was spiking. BP erratic. ECG throwing up PVCs like flares. Marin had seen this dance before. She paged the attending, but Dr. Feldman was buried 2 floors down on a code. It was just her now. Sloan was conscious, barely. His hand fumbled at the bed rail. She grabbed it, firm. You're crashing. His lips moved. Don't. Let them put me on a vent. Too late. The monitor screamed, V-fib. She hit the code button. Code blue, room 612. I need a crash cart now. The aide lunged toward the bed. What are you doing? Marin shoved him back. Out, or you'll be next. She cut Sloan's gown, snapped open the airway kit. No anesthesiologist, no respiratory tech, no backup. But she didn't need backup. She needed a field tube, a 16-gauge needle, and 40 seconds. She found the landmarks with her fingers, slid the scalpel just below the cricoid. Blood, air, pressure equalized. She inserted the tube, locked it, began bagging. His chest rose, monitors stabilized. Then the attending burst in, wide-eyed. What the hell are you? He flatlined. I performed an emergency cricothyrotomy, Marin said, voice flat. He's stable. You performed a what? That's outside protocol. Nurses don't. Would you prefer he were dead? Feldman stared at her, mouth slightly open. Then he looked at the monitor and said nothing. They didn't write her up, not officially. There was no reprimand, just silence. The next day the consultant returned, not with questions, with coffee. "Who taught you that procedure?" he asked casually. "I read a lot," she said. "I did a little time with Delta. That wasn't textbook. I watched a video on YouTube." He snorted. "You're not supposed to exist." "Neither are you," Marin said, sipping her cup. "So maybe let's stop pretending." He stared at her for a long moment, then left. Later, alone in the break room, Marin pulled out a small black case from her bag. Inside, a scarred sat phone, sealed in plastic, battery removed. She hadn't touched it in over 4 years. She ran her fingers over it, once. Outside, the ICU buzzed with noise and light. Inside, she was already somewhere else. A corridor without doors. A memory without shape. Victor Sloan wasn't the story. He was the signal. And someone, somewhere, had just turned the key. The cold hum of the ventilator filled the room like a distant engine, steady and impersonal. Colonel Victor Sloan lay unconscious, his chest rising and falling under mechanical rhythm. His skin had the pale, waxy tone of someone far closer to the grave than the hallway. In room 612, life was on a timer. Marin sat beside the bed, eyes scanning the chart, though she already had it memorized. Post-emergency intubation, vitals stable, but his labs were a cocktail of failure. Renal function collapsing, oxygen saturation riding the edge. The man was a ticking bomb of systemic decay. But none of that explained what kept her in the room past the end of her shift. She should have clocked out 40 minutes ago. Her replacement, a rookie named Bryce, had offered to take over early. She said no. No one else would monitor Sloan like she would. Not because he deserved it, but because he meant something. To what she didn't know yet. Outside, in the ICU hallway, Dr. Feldman was tearing someone apart over the phone. His voice leaked through the glass. "No, I didn't authorize it, because we're not on a fucking fob in Kandahar, that's why. She's a nurse, not a goddamn Tier 1 medic." Marin ignored him. Instead, she focused on Sloan's hands. Veined, calloused, scarred. A story written in knuckles and fractures. His right pinky had a subtle crook. He'd broken it once and never had it properly reset. The kind of injury you got from punching someone with a sidearm still holstered. She'd seen it before, once, on a man who died covering her flank in Takur Ghar. Sloan wasn't just some retired warhorse, he was connected. And she needed to find out to what. 24 hours passed. Marin went home, came back. Sloan didn't wake. By the third night, the civilian consultant, Logan Sloan, son, Pentagon contractor, was waiting by the nurse's station. "You got a minute?" he asked her. Marin glanced at the clock. 60 seconds. "I ran a background check on you," Logan said. "Military to civilian transitions. Not easy to scrub the edges, but yours is damn clean. Too clean." She didn't blink. "You're not supposed to be running background checks on ICU nurses." "My father isn't supposed to be intubated by someone who knows how to perform a surgical airway like a battlefield corpsman." Silence. Then Marin said, "What do you want to know?" "I want to know where you learned that procedure. Iraq, 2012. Village sweep gone wrong. Medic was down. Someone had to cut the kid's throat open to keep him alive. So I did." "You weren't in Iraq in 2012. According to your file, you were finishing your MSN at Columbia." Marin leaned in. "Then I guess I didn't do it, did I?" She walked away. At 3:07 a.m., alarms shrieked again. Marin was already sprinting down the corridor before the overhead could call the code. Room 612. Sloan was convulsing, arms rigid, teeth clenched, eyes rolled back. The ventilator beeped in panicked rhythm, pressure alarms lighting up the monitor. His heart rate was spiking past 170. Then flatlined. "VFib again!" someone shouted. "Get the paddles!" Marin grabbed the defibrillator. "Clear!" Shock, no rhythm. "Clear!" Another shock. Still flat. Claudia moved to push epinephrine. Marin caught her wrist. "No epi," she said. Feldman had just arrived, breathless. "She's right. He'll go into cardiac rupture." They looked at each other for a second too long. Marin repositioned the leads. "Third jewel, let's end this." She shocked him again. The monitors flickered, then the rhythm returned, weak, erratic, but steady. "Sinus rhythm," whispered the intern. "He's back." Marin stepped back, sweat dripping from her jaw. She looked at Sloane's face. His eyes were open. And he was staring at her. 3 hours later, he was stabilized. Marin stood alone in the supply closet, hands trembling, adrenaline still flushing her bloodstream. She opened her locker and reached behind the spare shoes, the sat phone. She unwrapped it, slotted the battery in, powered it up. A single message blinked in the queue. "Ched protocol. Black do not speak, do not run, we are compromised." Her mouth went dry. She stared at it for a full minute before pulling the battery again. Sloane was conscious by morning. His voice was sandpaper. "You." Marin entered the room quietly. "Vitals look good." "You're not just a nurse." She tilted her head. "Neither are you just retired." He stared at her, face pale but eyes calculating. "You were one of them." "One of who?" "Night choir." Her heart stopped. Just for a second. That name hadn't been spoken in 6 years. "It doesn't exist," she said. "Exactly," he said, almost smiling. "I helped bury it." Outside the room, Logan was waiting again. This time, he looked rattled. "I decrypted a data packet from my father's old ops archive," he said. "There's a redacted file. Burn notice issued to a special unit in 2020. Every operative listed, deceased." He handed her a printed page. Marin's eyes scanned it, and stopped. Her name was there. Stamped. Deceased. KIA, non-combat. And below it, Operation. Palisade Echo. Location, undisclosed objective. Permanent asset neutralization. She looked up at Logan. "You need to leave." "Why?" "Because if you're looking at this, they already know you are." That night, she drove home under fog and silence. Every turn of the wheel, every headlight behind her, every flicker of movement in her mirror. It all meant something now. She didn't just perform an unauthorized field procedure. She announced herself. Someone knew she was alive. And they were coming. Marin had her rituals. Strip down in the laundry room. Scrub her arms like she was still deployed. Burn her scrubs in a separate wash cycle. No music, no lights on after midnight. Even off-duty, she operated like she was under surveillance, because in truth, she always had been. But now the quiet was too perfect. Her apartment, a one-bedroom on the edge of Anacostia, hadn't changed in 2 years. Same curtains, same books still in piles by the door. Same framed photo near the kitchen sink. 3 black women in full gear, arms slung around each other's shoulders, desert dust clinging to every inch of them. One of them was Marin. The others were gone. She stared at the picture too long, then flipped it face down. At 0500, she made tea. She never used the coffee pot anymore. That was Talia's habit. Black coffee, burnt, no sugar. The woman could knock back 2 cups and disassemble a field chest tube setup before Maureen even tied her boots. The last time Marin saw her, she was being dragged onto a medevac in Kandahar, eyes rolled back, blood seeping through the canvas. Marin had stitched the artery herself, thought she'd saved her. 2 weeks later, the report said, training accident. No body, no funeral, just silence, just like the rest of them. By the time the sun cracked through the blinds, she was already in her car, parked 3 blocks from Harlan Medical Center. She wasn't going in yet. She was watching the staff entrance. 10 minutes passed, then she saw it. A white VA van, no markings. Too clean, no license plate on the front. It parked, but no one got out. Marin noted the angle. Tinted windows. Line of sight to both the ICU entrance and the east stairwell. She didn't move. At 0709, Claudia walked past the van, oblivious. At 0712, a custodian. At 0715, Bryce, the rookie, paused to tie his shoe directly in the line of fire. Marin's heart ticked faster. Not because he was in danger, because she was. They weren't after Sloane. They were waiting for her. Back in the hospital, room 612 had been cleaned. Sloane transferred out. No forwarding room. No name on the board. Discharged, Claudia said casually. To Walter Reed, I think. Marin knew that was a lie. Nobody transferred a cardiac critical patient without a transport team, without record. She tapped into the system from a side terminal, logged in with a nurse admin code she wasn't supposed to have. Sloane's file was locked. She tried again. Access denied. She tried her old clearance from her night choir days, buried deep in a code string she hadn't used since the program was burned. The screen blinked. Then, access granted. The file opened briefly, just long enough for her to see it wasn't a discharge. Patient transferred, off-record custody, directive, Black Lantern. Then the screen shut down completely. Marin stood, breathing shallow. Someone inside the system still recognized her, and that meant someone else wanted her erased. At noon, a man in hospital scrubs tried to enter the ICU. He had the walk of someone pretending not to be military, loose shoulders, slightly too casual gait. But the posture was wrong, too centered. His shoes were soft-soled, silent. He was carrying a biohazard bin. Marin intercepted him. Need a badge to get past this point, she said calmly. He flashed one, generic, fake, not even scannable. New contractor, he said, voice flat. Medical waste. You're early, Marin said, not blinking. That pickup's 1,500 hours. Dispatch changed it. I am dispatch. They locked eyes. He blinked first, then he moved fast, too fast, hand darting for his belt where something small and metallic glinted. She caught his wrist mid-motion, twisted. He grunted. She brought her elbow up, broke his nose in a single move. He dropped the bin. It cracked open. No waste inside. Just black gloves, zip ties, a syringe. "Security!" someone shouted. But Marin was already dragging him into the equipment room, kicking the door shut behind her. She kneed him in the gut, held him down with one arm as she ripped off his ID. No name. But under his sleeve, just below the elbow, she saw it. A faded tattoo. Black Lantern unit. A torch encircled in thorns. Her stomach flipped. That unit was supposed to be gone. Disbanded. Like hers. Like night choir. She tied him to the chair with IV tubing, mouth bleeding, eyes still unfocused. "Who sent you?" she asked. He grinned, bloody. "You don't get it. You were never supposed to be awake." Then he bit down. Marin lunged, but too late. Cyanide capsule. Fast. He convulsed. Died within seconds. They tried to cover it. The official story: a deranged visitor attempted to steal medication. Died from overdose. No nurse harmed. No investigation warranted. But Marin had already pulled the security footage. She had it saved to a drive no one could trace. She sent it anonymously to Logan Sloane. No message, no context. Just a name attached to the file. Palisade Echo. Movie that night. She sat in her apartment watching the dead man's face freeze on the screen. Rewind, freeze, zoom. That tattoo was not just a symbol, it was a signature. A ghost signature from a program that never should have touched U.S. soil. Black Lantern wasn't just watching her. They were activating her file. And Protocol Black? It didn't mean she was compromised. It meant they were. The walls of Walter Reed were older than the paint that covered them. Every hallway felt like it had seen ghosts, and most probably had. Marin moved through the corridors in civilian clothes, her posture loose but deliberate, her hair tied back in a simple bun. She wore no ID. She wasn't supposed to be here. But she knew this place, knew how to walk like she belonged. Sloane had been moved here, unregistered, under protective supervision, which meant he was a prisoner with pillows. Not for his protection, but for the convenience of whoever was keeping him from talking. Marin slipped into a custodial elevator using a stolen access badge. She wrote it down to the sub-level, restricted care, high-clearance observation. A nurse stepped out as the doors opened. Marin nodded as they passed. No eye contact. She moved fast. Room 3C. The lights were dimmed, blinds drawn. A single guard stood outside. Former military. Wrong stance. Right hand favoring his hip, gun side. Soft vest under his shirt. She approached from the left. No sound. The guard barely had time to turn his head before she pressed the taser to the base of his neck and dropped him with a controlled jolt. She caught him as he fell, lowered him gently, dragged him into the next room, tied him with his own belt. Then, and only then, did she step into 3C. Victor Sloan was awake, pale, still tethered to monitors, but no ventilator now. Oxygen cannula, pupils sharp. "You're not dead," he said flatly. "You make it sound like a disappointment." He almost smiled. Marin locked the door behind her and pulled a chair to the bed. "Tell me about Palisade Echo," she said. Sloan didn't answer at first. His eyes flicked to the monitor, then to the IV line. A faint nod toward the ceiling. Cameras, microphones. She already knew. He took a slow breath, then began anyway. "Night Choir was never meant to be permanent," he said. "We built you because we had a problem no one wanted to admit. Surgical medics, black, brown, female, people who could move through regions unnoticed. You weren't just healers, you were operators." "We were human shields," Marin said coldly. "No, you were ghosts." He shifted in bed, winced. "After Kandahar, the mission changed. You weren't supposed to come back. But you did. You were too visible, too effective. Someone high up decided that was dangerous. And Palisade Echo? A cleanup program. Authorized by someone above my grade, targeted erasure. All Night Choir operatives flagged as security risks. You were declared KIA to avoid scrutiny." "You helped bury us." Sloan nodded. "I tried to pull you out before the final sweep, but someone else got there first." Marin's jaw clenched. "Who?" He hesitated. His voice dropped to a whisper. "General Tressler." The name hit her like cold water. Tressler had been the deputy commander of Joint Special Ops Command. Publicly retired. Privately, deep in contracting networks tied to private military entities, black-budget testing labs, AI fusion logistics. "Tressler was never supposed to know about Choir," Sloan said, "but the files were leaked to him by someone inside DARPA." "Why?" "Because your team completed something he needed. He didn't want witnesses. You weren't just medics. You'd seen what Echo did in the field." Marin stood. Her pulse was a tight drumbeat in her ears. "He's still out there," she said. "Yes." "And he's still running it." Sloan nodded. "And he doesn't know you survived." "Then why is he trying to kill me now?" Sloan met her eyes. "Because someone told him you didn't die in Kandahar. Someone showed him." 2 hours later, Marin walked out of Walter Reed with a burner phone full of audio. Sloan hadn't made it. They found him slumped in bed at OIG 30. Cause of death, pulmonary embolism. No witnesses, no alarm. But she'd seen the second IV bag they swapped during her exit. Standard issue potassium chloride spike. Cardiac arrest, undetectable in autopsy if the dose is small enough. Murder disguised as timing. Just like always. By sundown, Logan Sloan was in a secure parking garage near Langley, holding the burner to his ear, face pale. "You recorded him?" he asked. "Yes," Marin said. "It won't hold up in court, but it'll be enough." "Enough for what?" "To burn Tressler." Logan ran a hand over his face. "You realize what that'll trigger. Half the defense contractors on the eastern seaboard have him on payroll." "Good," Marin said. "Let them squirm." Logan paused. "You could just disappear," he said. "You're good at that." Marin looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Not a nurse, not even a soldier anymore. Something in between. Something people like Tressler created and then tried to erase. "If I run now," she said, "they'll bury another Choir, and the next one won't survive." That night, she opened an old footlocker beneath her bed. The lock was biometric. The foam inside still smelled like sand and metal. She pulled out the only things she had left from those days: a battered tactical med kit, a worn black choir patch, faded but whole, a sidearm, unregistered, and a folded list of names. Not choir operatives, targets. Most were crossed out. One wasn't. Tressler, M.C., priority red. She added a name beneath it. Sloan, V., deceased. Cause, execution by proxy. Then she slid the sat phone from its case and powered it up again. This time she sent a message. Night choir operative. Adebayo, M. Status, active. Objective, declassification, retribution, survival. The message had barely bounced off the last encrypted satellite node before the reply came in. 3 words, coded but unmistakable. Protocol, black confirmed, and beneath it, active assets compromised. Immediate containment in progress. The walls closed in fast. Marin abandoned her apartment within 20 minutes. She left nothing behind. Clothes, laptop, even the burner phone she'd used to record Sloan, wiped, dismantled, and tossed into a storm drain. She knew the window between triggering Protocol Black and the first contact attempt was never more than 72 hours. That was doctrine. She also knew they were already ahead of schedule. Night Choir had used Protocol Black as a final recourse, a dead man's switch buried in untraceable frequencies and quantum key fragments, designed to alert any surviving operatives that the choir's existence had been publicly threatened or politically inconvenient. It was never meant to be used. The last time it was, 4 people vanished. 1 turned up burned in a stolen SUV outside Djibouti. 1 was never found. The remaining 2 were rehabilitated, a euphemism that Marin still heard in her sleep. Now it was active, and Marin was the only one left to answer it. She relocated to an off-grid safe house 30 miles outside D.C., a rusted trailer tucked into the dense tree line of a decommissioned training ground near Quantico. It had no power except for a solar battery, no plumbing, no digital footprint. It wasn't a fallback. It was a grave someone had forgotten to dig. Inside she set to work, maps spread across the folding table. Classified personnel logs printed from an encrypted drive she'd kept buried inside an old defibrillator battery. Photos of Tressler, now years out of uniform but still orbiting weapons contracts like a cold planet refusing to die. His last known appearance was a closed-door event in Vienna, Military Futurism Summit, hosted by a defense startup with roots in DARPA's darker edges. That company was called Severin Group, and buried in their executive board, 2 names Marin recognized from Kandahar. They were clean now, polished, forgotten. But she remembered their boots in the mud. She remembered how they'd looked away when Choir was ordered into a kill zone with no air support and no comms. And now, they were building a future on the bones of people like her. The next day, Protocol Black made its first move. It didn't knock. It burned. Marin had just stepped out of the trailer to piss when she saw the smoke, black and thick, rising from the tree line. 200 yards west. She moved fast, barefoot, crunching through dead leaves and frost until she reached the edge of the clearing. There, her secondary cache, an old ranger station she'd stocked with backup gear, hard drives, emergency IDs, was engulfed in fire. Flames crawled across the roof like fingers. A fuel trail scorched a path from the door to the tree line. She scanned for movement, saw none. But she heard it, the soft, high-frequency hum of a drone above the canopy. Not surveillance, not civilian, tactical, the kind that didn't transmit footage. It sent coordinates. She ducked into cover just as a soundless explosion cracked through the trees, directed EMP. Her solar rig went dead 3 seconds later. Not a hit. A warning. She ran, not out of fear, out of protocol. They were pushing her toward a funnel, squeezing the walls until her options narrowed to 1. Come in, or go down. She chose neither. 2 days later, she was sitting across from a man named Vega in a no-name motel off I-81. He used to be Choir's cryptographic specialist. Now he made a living running penetration tests for Fortune 500 companies, too arrogant to know they were already compromised. He hadn't aged well. Jumpy, pallid, off caffeine on lithium. But he still had one gift no one could code out of him: memory. "You're supposed to be dead," he whispered after 5 minutes of silence. "So are you," Marin replied. "I'm off-grid. No one knows?" "Black Lantern knows. They already hit one of my caches. They're circling you, too." Vega blinked hard. "Then why bring them here?" "Because I need your copy of the Choir backups." He hesitated. "I wiped everything." "You never wiped anything, Felix. You just renamed the bodies." A long silence. Then he slid a thumb drive across the table. "Everything I had, training logs, after-action reports, reassignment orders, even a partial list of the Echo experiments." Marin froze. "Echo ran tests?" "On you," Vega said. "On all of us." "Bullshit. Not biological, not weapons, cognitive. They were mapping trauma, seeing how far they could push us before breakdown. The mission in Kandahar, that wasn't a rescue op, it was stress modeling. You were the control group." Marin stared at him. "Why?" "Because they wanted to build new choirs, smarter, faster, easier to erase." She pocketed the drive. "Then let's give them a test they can't survive." Back at the trailer, she had barely reassembled her rig with scavenged parts when the sat phone lit up. Unknown number. She answered without speaking. A voice on the other end, a man's, flat, calm. "Marin Adebayo, we have your location. You have 24 hours to comply." "With what?" "Extraction, interrogation, resolution." "Who am I speaking to?" A pause. Then, "I am protocol." The line went dead. She sat for a long time after that. In the silence, she could hear the crackle of burned leaves still smoldering. Her muscles ached. Her mouth tasted like metal. They weren't threatening her. They were inviting her to her own assassination and framing it as a negotiation. But they had made one mistake. They forgot who she was before the stethoscope. She pulled out the night choir patch from the footlocker and stitched it to the inside of her jacket. She loaded her sidearm, strapped on her trauma pack, and wrote one sentence across the inside of her arm in Sharpie, in case her body was found. "I was never useless. You were just afraid of what I could survive." They came in at 03:17, the hour Marin's mind was sharpest and most dangerous. She had booby-trapped the approach, fishing wire across the trail, crushed glass buried shallow under fallen leaves. But it didn't matter. These weren't amateurs. They were surgical. 2-man entry team, no headlights, thermal gear, comms dark. She didn't hear them. She felt them. Like pressure in the air had shifted, like a room with the oxygen sucked out. She killed the lights, grabbed the knife. The trailer was too small for a firefight. She knew that. So did they. They breached soft, rear latch, no noise, no flashbangs. The first one entered low, carbine raised, sweeping left. The second came through 2 seconds later, covering right. Marin had crawled under the cot. She waited until both had passed the door, then struck. A sharp movement, her hand around the first man's ankle. Yanking hard. He fell forward, gear clattering. Before the second could turn, she was already on her feet, blade flashing upward. The combat knife, curved and blunt-tipped, a trauma tool she'd sharpened into a weapon, plunged into his neck just below the ear. A burst of blood hit the wall. He collapsed. The first man spun on the floor, trying to grab his sidearm. Marin kicked the wrist. Hard. Bone snapped. The gun clattered away. "Who sent you?" she hissed, pinning his arm with her knee. His visor was up, brown eyes, early 40s, jaw tight with disbelief. "Who are you?" he spat. Marin didn't answer. She crushed his windpipe with the butt of her fist. Not fatal, but final. 5 minutes later, she was in the woods, soaked in blood that wasn't hers. The trailer was gone, rigged with thermite and diesel, set to burn hot and leave no evidence. The two attackers were stripped of their comms, weapons, IDs. She left them in the creek, wrists zip-tied. They'd live. Maybe. But someone would have to explain how two Special Activities Division contractors failed to kill a nurse with a field knife and a cot mattress for cover. Someone would realize, finally, that the old files weren't exaggerated. By noon, the footage was viral. Not of the attack. Of her. The incident at Harlan, where she'd performed the emergency cricothyrotomy on Colonel Sloan, had quietly leaked. A nurse performing field surgery. Then footage of her disabling the medical waste contractor in the supply room, now reframed by whistleblowers as a would-be assassin. The videos were raw, blurry, but damning. Some called her a hero. Some called her a fraud. The most dangerous ones just called her useful. By 4 p.m., her name was trending alongside headlines like Black Ops Nurse Saves War Hero or Kills to Protect a Secret. Who is Marin Adebayo? From Nightingale to Night Choir, the medic who disappeared, Logan called from a secure line. You're famous. I'm targeted. There's congressional noise now. The DOD's denying Night Choir existed, saying you're a fantasist. Let them. They're scared. No, Marin said. They're arming. Big difference. She drove back into D.C. that night. Not stealthy, not hiding. She wore her scrubs, her hospital badge. She walked into Harlan Medical Center through the front door. Eyes followed her like she was a ghost. Nurses who once dismissed her fell silent. Bryce, the rookie, stood like a statue in the break room as she passed. One of the medtechs whispered, "She's back," like a curse or a prayer. Security watched her, but no one stopped her. She went straight to the ICU, to Claudia. You're not supposed to be here, Claudia said, voice tight. Neither is half this floor, Marin replied. I need access to Sloan's pre-admission scans. They're locked. So unlock them. I could lose my job. You could lose a lot more if you keep pretending this isn't real. Claudia hesitated, then turned her monitor, typed, swore under her breath. Marin scanned the file. Her eyes froze. There. In the scans. Something no one had noticed, probably because no one knew what they were looking at. A thin foreign body embedded near Sloan's spine. Microtag, surgical grade, not standard implant. Trackable, transmittable, and something else, when she enhanced the scan, filtered by thermal resonance. It pulsed. It was live. Sloan had been implanted with something. A transmitter? No. Worse. An extraction key. A data vault. Inside a dying man's body. She stepped away from the monitor. Claudia was pale. What the hell is that? She whispered. Insurance, Marin said. For who? Marin stared out the ICU windows at the city beyond. For whoever killed him. She left the hospital before the next shift change. Fast, quiet. The air was cold and damp. Her breath fogged as she reached the parking deck. That's when she saw him. A man, standing by her car. VA uniform. Cap low. Same build as the one who'd watched her from the garage 3 days ago. She slowed. He didn't move. Her fingers brushed the inside of her sleeve, where she'd taped a scalpel. Then he spoke. You're off mission, Lieutenant. Her blood iced. The voice was familiar. Wrongly familiar. He took a step forward. I was choir, too, he said. But I stayed bought. You didn't. Marin didn't flinch. Who sent you? Doesn't matter, he said. They want you brought in. Not dead. Too late. He smiled. They know. Then lunged. She sidestepped, ducked low. The scalpel in her hand sliced across his ribs, shallow, deliberate. He gasped, faltered, swung wide. She pivoted, jammed her knee into his thigh, hit his temple with her elbow. He collapsed, but didn't pass out. I could have killed you, he said, groaning. You still might. You think they're scared of you. They're not. They're scared of what's in you. She stared at him, then walked away. Back in her safe house, she opened Vega's drive again. pulled the scan of Sloane's implant, matched it to a file. Class 4 memory extraction node, developed under Project Mothline. Sloane wasn't just a liability, he was a carrier. And if someone got that implant before it shut down, they'd have access to every mission Quire ever ran, every burn notice, every operator name, every crime, which meant they weren't hunting her to stop her. They were trying to stop what Sloane left behind, and the key to unlocking it might be inside her, too. The bar was nothing, no name, no menu, no sound, but the soft clink of ice against cheap glass. Marin chose it because no one would remember her there. The bartender didn't look up when she entered. He'd been paid not to. The man in the corner did look up. Slowly. General Malcolm C. Tressler. Retired. Decorated. Unaccountable. He looked older than his photos. White hair buzzed short, eyes dulled with age but not softened. The years hadn't made him fragile. They'd made him careful. He sipped from a rocks glass without offering her one. Marin sat across from him. "No guards?" she said. "No need," Tressler replied. "You're not here to kill me." "You sure?" He smiled. "If you were, I'd be bleeding already." Marin let silence stretch. She'd rehearsed this meeting a dozen times. In dreams, in nightmares, in mirrors with a sidearm. None of those versions had included how tired she'd feel in the moment. Not physically. Existentially. "I know what you did to Quire," she said. Tressler's face didn't change. "What did I do?" "You turned us into a test group. You took medics and turned them into field labs. You pushed us into stress-fire kill zones and measured how long we lasted before we broke. You didn't break. No thanks to you." He set the glass down, slow and clean. "You think I did it because I'm a monster," he said. "Because I hate you. That's not it. Enlighten me." "I did it because you were too effective. Quire wasn't just a success, it was an evolution. And no institution survives evolution. Not without controlling it." Marin folded her arms. "You ordered the burn." He didn't deny it. "I gave the authorization to erase operational memory from the network. Your names, your missions, your locations. And when that wasn't enough, you had the survivors hunted. You were never supposed to be survivors. That's the part I underestimated." Marin leaned forward, voice low. "I'm the one you missed. Why?" He hesitated. For the first time, his confidence wavered. "Because someone pulled you out of the system," he said. "I don't know who. Your name was flagged for removal, but the deletion order vanished. We thought you were dead, even celebrated it. Who pulled it?" "I don't know, maybe Sloane, maybe Vega, maybe someone who thought Quire could still be useful one day." He looked at her, head tilted. They were right. She slid the photo across the table. It was grainy, black and white, taken from a military drone in Kandahar 6 years earlier. A man standing outside a fortified compound, not in uniform. Tressler. She tapped the image. "You were on site during Operation Rookfall." He didn't blink. "You told Congress you were stateside. I was in observation. You ran it." "Marin," he said quietly, "you don't want the answers you're looking for." "Yes," she said. "I do." He studied her face. Then finally he said it. "We weren't extracting hostages, we were seeding a test field." Marin's stomach turned. "We dropped a false distress signal in a populated zone. Predicted it would pull insurgent groups toward it. Lets us watch how different medical response teams reacted under fire. We sent Quire in without knowing what they were walking into. You baited us." "No," he said. "We measured you." Marin stared at him. Her pulse slowed to a dangerous calm. "You killed 14 people, 4 operators, 3 civilians, and then buried the whole thing as an overextended humanitarian op." He nodded. "And I'd do it again," he said. The sound of the bar around them vanished. Marin couldn't hear the traffic outside anymore. Couldn't feel her hands. She felt something else. Purpose. "Why now?" she asked. "Why come out of your hole and meet me?" "Because you've become a liability," Tressler said, but also an opportunity. You want me back? No, I want the choir back. Marin laughed, bitter and sharp. They're dead. You're not. Tressler leaned in. There's a new directive. Not Palisade Echo, Reliquary Protocol. We're building forward-facing trauma mapping teams. Synthetic adaptive triage combatants. Civilian operatives trained in Black Zone medicine with embedded AI surgical support. Choir was the model. You want to restart it? We already have, and you're the face they'll believe. Marin stood. You're insane. No, he said. I'm practical. You erased me, then tried to kill me. And now you want me to rebrand the program you murdered? Yes, Tressler said. Because the difference between a terrorist and a hero is a press release. And right now you're trending. Marin left the bar. She didn't kill him. Not because he didn't deserve it, because it would be too small, too private. He needed to be seen, exposed, stripped the way they stripped her. By midnight, she was with Logan again, this time in a safe flat 2 floors above a church-turned community clinic. He was already decrypting the Sloan implant data on Vega's drive. It's real, he said. There are files in here dating back to 2011, mission logs, requisitions, surveillance footage, even some of the internal psychology reports. Marin sat still, staring at the screen. What about Reliquary Protocol? He frowned. Hold on. He opened a folder. Her own name was on the first page. Subject: Adebayo Marin sought status, dormant candidate suggested use, media rehabilitation, proof of concept, Black Choir 2, 0, civilian interface viability, and the note beneath, if she resists, reframe as rogue, deploy lantern for discreditation or retrieval. Logan looked up. They were never going to let you disappear. No, she said. They were going to make me the mascot, or the martyr. She leaned back. Thought of the names on the patch. Of Talia. Vega. Every choir member who had bled into the sand because of a report like this. And then she made a decision. We leak it, she said. All of it. You'll burn every bridge left. They burned first. 36 hours later, a dozen encrypted drives hit inboxes at 3 independent media agencies, 4 advocacy groups, and a senator's chief of staff with a known grudge against Tressler's private security ties. The files were labeled Choir, M4, Non-Fiction, Pale Night, Palisade, Reliquary, each one a slow fuse to the same explosion. And at the center of it, a nurse, a medic, a ghost, with a voice. The morning Harlan Military Medical Center locked its doors. No one knew why. No active shooter, no bomb threat, no obvious breach. Just a quiet, coordinated shutdown. No entry, no exit. All security rerouted through internal command. Staff whispered about a federal protocol while visitors stood outside confused and frustrated. At 10:17 a.m., 2 unmarked black SUVs parked at the curb. By 10:22, the lobby was filled with cameras, and at 10:23, Lieutenant Marin Adebayo walked through the front doors in uniform. Pressed blues, rank displayed, boots polished, no disguise, no hesitation. She hadn't worn the uniform in 6 years. It fit like a verdict. The camera crews weren't local. They were placed strategically, surgically. Logan had ensured 3 major outlets received the leak simultaneously the night before. A data dump of high-resolution internal documents, declassified surveillance footage, redacted ops logs, Project Night Choir, Palisade Echo, Reliquary Protocol, and the name at the center of them all, Tressler, MC, Asset Command and Termination Authorization. No denials yet. The Pentagon was still scrambling to formulate language that could dismiss the footage without confirming the leaks. But it was too late. Marin had made sure of it. The lobby was silent when she entered. No one moved. A few nurses stood frozen near the admissions desk. She saw Claudia behind the glass, her mouth slightly open, a tablet in her hand. Bryce was near the elevator, eyes locked on her. He had read the files. Everyone had. Half of them didn't believe it. The other half believed it too much. She walked forward, each step deliberate. Not hiding, not explaining. Then someone moved. The security guards parted as an elderly man in full Class A dress uniform entered from the East Corridor. Dark green jacket, silver eagles, service ribbons lined like tombstones across his chest. General Malcolm Tressler. For a moment the crowd didn't understand what was happening. He wasn't flanked by soldiers or cameras. He had come alone, and he was unarmed. He stopped 6 feet in front of Maren, stared at her, then removed his cap, and bowed. Slowly, deliberately. His spine didn't bend easy, but it bent. Gasps rippled across the room. The click of camera shutters spiked. Maren didn't move. Her face was carved from stone. "Lieutenant Adebayo," Tressler said, voice level, amplified by the silence. "I came to give you what the service never did, recognition." A pause. And an apology. She looked at him, not blinking. "You're 2 years too late," she said. Tressler straightened. "Maybe, but not too late to stop the next one." Behind him, the doors opened again. 2 men in black suits entered. FBI. One carried a case, the other a tablet. "I'm surrendering federal credentials," Tressler said. "Full cooperation. I'm ready to testify." He looked at the cameras. "And I name the Severin Group as co-conspirators in the illegal resurrection of disbanded military assets." Maren blinked. This wasn't the plan. Later, in the command break room, Logan replayed the clip on a loop. Tressler's bow. His surrender. His confession. "He flipped," Logan muttered. "He knew the fire was coming. You burned the house down and he walked out the back door." "He never meant to take the blame," Maren said. "No. But the optics." He bowed, in public. "That changes everything." "No," Maren said. "It exposes everything." She tapped the screen. "Look at the man behind him." Logan froze the frame, far back, standing near the pillar. Blurry, suit, hands clasped, eyes on Maren. "Who is he?" "Severin board chair," she said. "Martin Varos, Black Lantern's money handler. DARPA linked. Tressler just traded his own skin to keep that man untouched." Logan cursed. By turning himself in, Tressler takes the heat off Severin. The hearings will focus on what he did 6 years ago, not what they're doing now. Maren stood. "It's not over." 3 hours later, Tressler was escorted from the building in cuffs. Not shackled, just performative restraint. Reporters shouted. He said nothing, but he looked back once, and his eyes found Maren's, watching from the second-floor railing. For a moment, she didn't see a war criminal. She saw the man who sent her unit to die. And now? He was a man making sure their deaths became useful, exactly like he always wanted. Back in the ICU, Bryce cornered her. "I read the logs," he said, voice low. "What they did to you, the others." Maren nodded. I didn't know," he stammered. "We all thought you were just, cold, detached. I was surviving." He nodded, eyes wide. "I saw the footage from Kandahar. I lived it," she said, and walked away. That night, the nurses' lounge was quiet. Claudia poured 2 coffees without asking. "You're still you," she said. "No," Maren replied. "Not anymore." She drank it black. This place could never hold her again. She'd come back to break the silence, not to stay in it. Outside, rain streaked down the emergency entrance glass. Maren stood there in uniform, alone, under the awning. One arm folded across her chest. Inside her pocket, a new list of names. Reliquary Program. Active stages, target acquisition in progress. Experimental team, Phoenix Cell, Severin Group. They had buried the choir, but they had not buried the blueprints. Someone out there was still building the next version, and this time, they'd be better at erasing the bodies. As she turned to leave, she noticed something scrawled on the wall by the staff door, marker pen, half erased by time, a phrase she hadn't heard since selection. First to bleed, last to be believed. Under it, a date. The day choir was disbanded. She stood in front of it for a long time, then pulled her pen, and wrote beneath it, "Still breathing." The story fractured like glass. Across the news cycle, it spun in 100 directions, each narrative tugging at a different version of truth, shaped by whoever told it loudest. To some, Maren Adebayo was a whistleblower, the ex-military nurse who survived a buried Black Ops program and exposed the government's dirtiest secret. To others, she was a trained killer masquerading in scrubs, radicalized by trauma and orchestrating a media spectacle to assassinate the reputations of decorated officers. But most didn't know what to think, and that was exactly what Severin Group wanted. Within 48 hours of General Tressler's arrest, talking heads flooded primetime. "She was just a nurse," one said. "She was a military asset," another countered. "A symptom of a broken chain of command." A myth designed to distract from real oversight failures. Her name was everywhere, and yet no one could decide who she had been. Behind the headlines, the response was swift and calculated. Congressional subcommittees launched a formal inquiry into Night Choir and Palisade Echo. A redacted version of Maren's leaked files was entered into the record, sanitizing the worst of it while appearing transparent. Tressler's trial was fast-tracked under national security parameters, but Severin Group? Untouched. They moved their financial headquarters out of the country, shifted R&D into black-budget facilities in the Balkans and West Africa. Any assets tied to reliquary protocol went underground, and 2 weeks later, a private courier delivered a manila envelope to Logan's mailbox. No return address. No name. Inside, a single photo. A young black woman in surgical scrubs, flanked by 2 men in full tactical gear. All 3 wore matching Night Choir patches. Written on the back, Phoenix Cell. Launch, Q2. Location, undisclosed. The future had already begun. Maren went dark. Not dead, not vanished, just gone. She left behind no apartment, no clinic records, no active credit. Even Logan didn't know where she'd gone, though sometimes late at night, a folder would appear on his encrypted drive. Patient logs from war zones, encrypted medical journals from Eastern Europe, a photo of a child with a cauterized chest wound in a collapsed hospital, a hand holding pressure, brown-skinned, strong, deliberate. Her hand. 3 months later, Senator Eileen Marcus read Maren's full testimony in a closed-door session. She was a veteran herself, Air Force, Gulf War, and she read every line without blinking. When she was done, she stood and said one sentence. "We do not bury women like this. We build nations on them." The transcript was sealed, but the quote leaked, and the legend grew. Somewhere in South America, in a former cartel compound now used by a covert NGO trauma team, a woman calling herself May stitched up a soldier who shouldn't have lived. He whispered through broken Spanish, "You were one of them, the choir." She didn't answer, just adjusted his drip and walked away. At the edge of Nairobi, a medical truck was ambushed by rebels. 10 dead. 1 survivor. A child said the woman who saved her had moved like a shadow and knew how to stop bleeding with just her fingers. The child didn't know her name. At the UN Peacekeeping Assembly, a new proposal appeared in the final docket. Title: Independent Mobile Trauma Cells, Civilian Affiliated, Battlefield Embedded. The attached white paper was unsigned, but embedded in the metadata of the PDF file was a line of code, a signature hidden where only someone trained in choir encryption would see it. LT Adebayo exfil confirmed. One day, in an unnamed desert, someone painted a mural on the wall of a burned-out field hospital, a woman in combat boots and scrubs. One hand holding gauze to a wound, the other holding a blade behind her back. Beneath it, in rough charcoal, Her name was Marin. She made them remember. The myth lived on, but the woman? She walked alone, sometimes bleeding, sometimes hunted, always moving, not to hide, to protect, to warn, to witness. Because the people who built programs like Reliquary always came back, and someone had to be waiting, someone who had already died once and crawled back not for revenge, but for a reckoning, someone who would not be erased, someone whose silence had become a weapon. And when they asked later, long after the hearings and the spin and the flames had died down, who she really was, they said, she was the black nurse they called useless, until the world bowed to her instead. In the blistering heat of western Sudan, under the scorched sheet metal roof of a makeshift triage center, the girl was dying. 10 years old, shrapnel in her chest, lungs filling fast. The local doctor hesitated. Too much blood, too little time. Then the woman stepped forward, hair tucked beneath a sweat-soaked scarf, scars visible where sleeves ended, eyes like a storm over still water. No ID, no rank, just presence. She didn't speak. She worked. 10 minutes later, the girl was breathing again. The doctor asked her name. The woman wiped her blade clean and said, "Doesn't matter." But one of the medics, an old man with a tattered U.S. flag stitched to his pack, whispered behind her back, "That was Marin." And the myth breathed again. Back in Washington, the halls of power trembled, but didn't fall. Tressler's confession had detonated the illusion of clean war, but Severin's legal team turned every truth into fog. The hearings dragged on, watered down by lobbyists and strategic memory loss. Still, one name kept surfacing, Marin Adebayo. They used it like a fulcrum, a weapon, a warning. They played her image in sound bites. The nurse who fought off assassins in a hospital. The woman who performed battlefield surgery under pressure. The former operative who'd lived through black-budget hell and walked back with fire in her hands. Public opinion was split. Was she a traitor, or the only honest name in the file? No one could decide. But the people who built Reliquary, they feared her either way. Severin Group moved their operations again, this time to Azerbaijan, buried beneath corporate shells and humanitarian grants. They weren't just building soldiers anymore. They were growing obedience, AI-fused medics, trauma response drones, civilians trained for war, wired to obey without hesitation, modeled on behavioral patterns pulled from the choir's deepest archives, modeled on her, and she knew it. At 400 in a frozen airstrip near Baku, an explosion tore through a Severin transport jet before takeoff. 12 dead. No survivors. Inside, experimental hard drives, coded implants, and a full Reliquary training manual. They blamed insurgents. But somewhere, a single sat phone received a pulse ping. Encrypted, untraceable. Phoenix cell neutralized. Civilians unharmed. Objective, complete, no signature. But Logan read it in a safe house in Prague and knew. She was still moving, still fighting. The final thread came months later. Tressler died in custody, stroke or poison. The autopsy was inconclusive. The day after his death, a package arrived on the desk of Senator Eileen Marcus. Inside, a flash drive, a patch. Faded, stitched with a bleeding choir note, and a simple note. He wasn't the last, but he was the first to pay. Marcus held a press conference that night. She didn't say Marin's name. She didn't have to. The last time anyone saw her, she was in a cave hospital near the Iran-Afghanistan border, treating wounded children caught in a drone crossfire no country would admit to. She stitched quietly, hands steady, voice low. One boy asked her, "Why do you help if you don't wear a flag?" She looked at him and said, "Because someone has to." They said she moved like a soldier but touched like a nurse, that she could kill a man with a needle, that she knew how to stop pain better than morphine, that her silence was heavier than gunfire. And when the war finally caught up to itself, when people looked back for the beginning, they found her name at the root of it, buried, erased, but still pulsing like a heartbeat. In the National Defense Archive, beneath 7 layers of redaction, A sealed report was found years later. Its subject line read, Night Choir, Aftermath Assessment, Afrust Final. The last paragraph said, Subject Adebayo, Marin was initially classified as non-viable for reintegration. Final field data suggests this was incorrect. Subject demonstrated unmatched resilience, strategic initiative, and medical response under fire. Conclusion, not useless, never was. Status, ghost, but never gone. Somewhere. Years later, a new medic in training stares at a wall of names, those who died in the field. One name is missing. Who was the black nurse? She asks. The one the general bowed to? An older instructor says, She was never just a nurse. What was she? The instructor smiles, just a little. A problem, she says. Too good, too smart, too much. And now? The instructor looks out the window. Now she's everywhere. Useless no more. Never was.